wake up with another front-end framework just dropped. But this is not a full-fledged framework, this is only a Vite plugin. But it's actually a very powerful Vite plugin designed to bridge the gap between React Native and web applications built with React, allowing us to have one code base for both. The framework is called One, and it's built by 3 guys, one of which is Nate Berman, which is also the creator of Tamagui or Tamagui, I don't know how you pronounce that. He's built Tamagui and also One, and this framework is currently in beta version, but let's explore it today and talk about what makes it different than all the other front-end frameworks. Up until now, if you wanted to build an application that's for the web and the mobile, you could use React Native or Flutter or some of the other frameworks out there. And both React Native and Flutter have their own version of a web frameworks, so you can build your applications for mobile and for web, but they are native first. So they do provide mobile first, and then they compile that for a web application if you need to. React Native for web allows us to transform a React Native mobile application into a web application by using the same components like text or view and transforming them into HTML elements. But when it comes to supporting APIs, it can be quite limited, and from my experience, very hard to work with. And the other thing that's quite limited with React Native is that React Native only uses CSS and JS for styling. So if you wanted to build your web application with React Native, you need to use CSS and JS for that as well. And Flutter for web works similarly, but I think in my opinion it's a bit more advanced than React Native for web. It has 2 different rendering engines like Canvas Kit or HTML, and you can use either one for your application, and it actually allows you to build pretty good website. But some of the drawbacks of Flutter for web is that the engines are not actually very powerful, as the load size is more significant than other web apps. And the web applications built with Flutter for web are not SEO optimized. And here's where One.js or OneStack comes into play. Let's actually take a look at how this works. So what they promise is a new React framework for web and native built on Vite. And they actually offer a few features. What they provide most value is local first, which basically means improving the developer experience when working on a new app, whether it's mobile or web. Now let's dive into the code a little bit more and see how this actually works. So here I have their example application built on my local. Let's go into the Vite config first and take a look at how this is set up. So this is using a One plugin. It has a lot of options, but I'm using mostly the default options here, and we can choose the default rendering mode, and I'm gonna get to the other rendering modes here as well. There's a lot more to talk about that. And they also use the Tamagui plugin. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct, but they also use the Tamagui plugin for the CSS and the styling of both the mobile and the React Native app. And when you run this, it gives you this nice looking menu where you can open the web, you can open the editor, or you can show Expo Go QR code. So this means I can open it in my web browser, or I can open it with Expo Go on my mobile phone. When it comes to routing, One uses universal routing, and it's very similar to Next.js routing with some differences. So here's an example that they've provided here. So we can use index.tsx here or a dynamic route, and this will actually be our routes for the app. It is, like I said, very similar to Next.js and how that works. It also supports loaders, which I'm also going to come back to in a minute, but all files can be turned into a route except the underscore layout files. Also, we have simple routes with index.tsx, or we can have dynamic routes, which can be a slug or an ID. In my example here, I have an ID, and we can also choose a routing mode. We can choose the type of rendering in the actual file. We can have a route plus SSG for server-side generated route. We can have a route plus SPA for a single page application route, SSR or API. This is how the router knows what kind of route this is gonna be. The other cool thing is, because this works for web and native, we can choose for which platform we want our route to be. We can have a separate file for web or native, or we can also choose iOS or Android separately. And then we have groups, where we can define a group by naming a folder with surrounding parentheses, like this. And this can provide a better way to organize your folder structure and all the files because of how the router works. And we also have a 404 not found route, which we can specify with adding a plus not found.tsx. And lastly, we have all the routes are typed. So for each of the routes, we know what the response is going to be and what the parameters are going to be as well. In the example I have here, so I have an app, and then if I navigate to the actual app, it's actually going to go into this feed group and go to the index. If I go to notification, this is going to load the notification plus SPA, and then we have a profile as well. And the content here is just an example content that they've seeded into a local database. But if I go into a post, then it goes to this file, which basically is a server-side rendered route of the post/ID. And Nate has a video of how this works, basically showcasing all the things you can do with one, which is a great watch if you're really interested into how this works. One of the examples they have there is they have an input where you can add a comment, and then the feed gets refreshed, and if you have the app open on mobile, it also auto refreshes and gives you the code. The other cool thing that one provides is the loader. So here we have a function loader, and this basically loads all of the content for this route. Because this is also a server-side rendered page, we can have all the code loaded for every request, or if it's a server-side generated page, you can also use the same thing. But this basically is using a hook that one provides, which is called useLoader, and then we provide a function loader where we basically get all the data we need for that page. In this case, it's getting a post with all of the information. Here it's using Drizzle in the example, but it gets all the posts and joins with the users and avatars and all the things we need to show feed posts with all the replies. And then all this is loaded, and I can use, you see here, this is returning the posts and the replies, and then I'm grabbing those and rendering them onto the page. And you can also create an API endpoint in the same way that Vite creates API endpoints. So I have here an add reply API endpoint defined, and one knows this is an API endpoint because I've added plus API here in the name. And then I have a post request defined here, which basically adds the reply with the old information into the database, returning a response or an error if there's any errors. Now I haven't actually deployed this to see how the deployment works, and I did try running this on my phone by using the Expo Go app and connecting with this QR code, and it did work pretty well. But I don't, like you can see, I don't really have any React Native files here specifically, so all of this is going to be rendered for the web and a React Native app as well, which I think is pretty cool. But yeah, this is just a small showcase of what one can do. Like I said, it's still in beta, so most of these things are still prone to breaking. But if you want to give this a try, I'm gonna add the link to onestack.dev in the description. And you also get all the other cool features like hot module reloading, so every time you change a code, it's gonna reload and re-render for both the web and the native app. It does work with Postgres, which is their database of choice. This seems like a cool new framework, and I'm excited to see where this goes in the future. But yeah, that's been it for this video. I would recommend giving this a try, especially if you work with mobile apps. That's been it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Enjoy the rest of the day. Happy coding. Bye.